Hi again and welcome to the Talkingbass podcast. This week Ellen is sitting down to talk bass with one of my favourite players, the great Billy Gould. Billy is best known as the bass player for the great Faith No More, and any of you fans out there will be more than aware of his signature grinding bass tone and funky melodic lines. In this interview, Billy gets to talk about his musical background, his approach to bass and bass tone, and much, much more. So let's join Ellen as she sits down to talk bass with the wonderful Billy Gould.
Hello and welcome to the Talkingbass podcast with me, your host, Ellen O'Reilly, and today I've got Billy Gould.
Hey, how's it going, Ellen?
Hey, Billy.
Good.
I'm doing alright, man, I'm doing alright. Settled into my little home studio / guitar holding area. And how are you doing?
like
You
you
said
got-
you're in
doing
California at the minute?
I'm in Southern California. Yep. Good. I mean, it's I have a little bit of a headache because I guess it's gonna rain. So this is what we get that's what a winter qualifies as over here. It's fine. Everything's good.
Oh man, I'm so jealous. But yeah, I want to know, how did it all start for you? How did you get into playing bass?
I mean, so really it started because I was with a bunch of kids. We were at our bicycles together and, you're all talking about things you want to do. And one kid was taking drum lessons and Roddy was one of us. His mom made him practice piano. And one kid wanted to play guitar and they wanted to start a band. And I was kind of hanging with them. And the only thing that nobody wanted to do was play bass. And I didn't really know what a bass was or what it did. I knew my next door neighbor played it. And that was good enough for me. He was in a band. So I just told my mom, I want to learn how to play bass. And she was like, I'm going to rent a bass for 2 months. And because this is potentially, just something else that's going to be sitting in your closet for the rest of your life you're never going to do. And I took some lessons just to check it out. She gave me that. And I kept up on it. I was about 13 and I was in this, we have these Boy Scouts out here. And a kid in my class and my Boy Scout troop was like, hey, I heard you're taking lessons from Pat O'Brien, I'm taking lessons from Pat O'Brien. I said, let me come over to your house and we'll start jamming. And that became a band where we started writing songs together. That was kind of the beginning of the whole thing.
And who were your early influences when it comes to bass?
Again, I had to kind of learn what a bass was first. But when it was, my next door neighbor who was in a band was into prog stuff. This is mid-70s, 74, 75. So who's that? It's Genesis, it's King Crimson, it's, really, yes. And so really technical stuff that I always wondered if someday I'd ever be able to play. But at the same time, it also hooked me because, for example, Chris Squire had a great bass tone, right? It grunted. And it was something that I liked that. It excited me. So that's kind of what got me into learning how to play. And I would go to my bass teacher and I'd bring him a Gentle Giant record and say, teach me how to play this. And he'd be like, why do you want to learn this? And how am I going to learn how to teach this to you? He would start laughing. But it was cool. It was also something I struggled with. I was 13, 14, 15 years old. And it was technically pretty complex, and I thought of it kind of like sports. I kind of felt like I was the kid in school who was not a really great athlete, liked to maybe play sports, but was never going to be like that guy. And then I heard the Sex Pistols album at my friend, the Boy Scout friend's house. He got the record, and that's kind of what really made me change my attitude towards music, because we were writing songs and we were just writing them for ourselves. We weren't really trying to be athletic about it. And the Sex Pistols kind of gave that validation where it was also just about what's the word? The thrill of playing music and less the technicality of playing music. And my 16-year-old self could totally get on board with that, because then we could start writing songs, and that was enough. What we did was cool. And that was the fire that really kind of set me in a new trajectory.
I mean, you can kind of hear all those influences in your tone. Definitely when you mentioned Chris Squire and then the punk era, because you have this signature gnarly tone,
I do, and I mean, I guess so. If I followed where my interests were, I mean, it starts with Chris Squire, and it goes to, it goes to Motorhead, it goes to Discharge, for sure, absolutely. There's some of that. There was a lot of soul and R&B music that wasn't that cool at the time. I mean, we had AM radio where, Rufus would be a regular thing. I grew up with that. Even though I didn't grow up as a soul guy, it was everywhere. And that kind of got into my brain and my thinking too, because I started realizing that it was part of me whether I liked it or not. I might as well learn how to accept that.
Your tone is always signature. It definitely, when you hear you play, it's you,
Mm-hmm.
But you lend your hand to so many different styles. I mean, you're playing lounge style when you're playing Reunited, and you're playing kind of soul when you're playing Evidence. And then it's like funk with, Falling to Pieces and Epic and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool how you've just used all those genres and put them into the band,
Well, I would say in all those different things that you say I do, I mean, you could probably always tell that it's me still. There's something consistent there, hopefully. It's all about finding ways to get pleasure, trying to do things where I feel like if there's something I'm missing in my life that needs some balance, it's great to bring in influences that maybe seem like they're disparate, but actually what they're doing is they're filling a hole that I'm not getting. It's all about me feeling good and having pleasure. That's basically it. Same reason you drink beer, the same reason you like good food,
Right. Well, how do you get that? How do you get that gnarly tone then? Because I know you use on basses and.
Well, this is actually kind of similar to it. It goes along with what I was talking about before. So the gnarly tone, okay, yeah, sure. Guys like Chris Squire, that metallic tone, that was something that I thought was really cool. But I will also say that, especially when I moved to San Francisco when I was 18, I was limited in my amp selection. I had an old PV amp and some speaker, some cabinet. It was a 410 cabinet that there had to be at least one blown speaker in it, and I couldn't really make it clean to save my life. But that's what I had. That's what I had to work with. It farted out really easily. And I think in any piece of equipment, like there's something to be found that it does well, right? And this amp that was, challenging, I found a way to kind of have fun using it, and I found its weaknesses and I exploited those weaknesses where I started enjoying it, and I started playing with chords more because it grunted a lot and the chords felt good, and that became kind of where I got my sound. And the weird thing is once I realized that I was getting pulled in that direction, then I was having a hard time upgrading to a better amp because they didn't do that shitty thing that I'd really come to rely on. And I kind of really, it got me to develop my hand to get more of that feeling out of it with my hands rather than relying on the equipment. So that's kind of really where it came from. That thing that I have now that I do actually came from the fact that I really didn't have much to work with, and I just kind of made it work.
So what do you mean by technique with your hand? Do you mean like because you've got a very, like, heavy-handed style. Is it to develop that?
Yeah, it's all about, So what I really liked, what really got me, having fun was making the speaker go boom like this, right? I like this boom. I like because it hits me in the chest if I'm standing in front of it. So I really got into heavy down picking, where the down pick is like the extension of the speaker. Now you can't play too fast that way. You're limited. Like if you're doing 16th notes, there's only so fast you're going to be able to do that. But it's also so much the speaker is going to be able to retract. So if you want to get that impact, that's about the right spot. That's like the what you say, like the key RPM. So the speaker's going back like that. That's the the right RPMs, if you want to put another word. So I can I've done a couple things where I've done some classes, like clinics with kids, and I just said, like, give me this amp, put it in, here's my bass, and here's what a bass sounds like to the amp, and then this is how it sounds like with me. And it's just with the strength and the way I've learned to use my wrist where I can make any amp kind of sound like that shitty amp that I used to have. It's the way you attack it, and it's the way it's how you attack the strings. It's how you expect you're going to get the speaker to work. You get a relationship with it, and that's kind of what I have got.
Yeah, well, you also use you employ lots of different techniques in your playing, like depending on the song. You know, 1 minute you're playing with a pick, then your finger style, and then you're
Yeah.
slapping.
Well, my old teacher, Pat O'Brien, when I was 13 years old, said, I'm going to teach you with fingers because you can always learn how to play with a pick. But I want you to learn how to play fingers correctly. That's one thing that he really got me to do. And even when I got into when I'm playing with Mike Borden, he's a very aggressive drummer. So, pick makes a lot of sense because it really fits well with him. But there are just some things where I'm glad I have the fingers because it's just something I think that, if it whatever it does to make the music sound better, it's great to have more tools to be able to use them. And I when I use my fingers, it's because I feel like it's just the right time to use them. That's pretty much it.
And you were one of the first people in your, well, you guys created your own genre of music, but with Fate No More, like to add slap to like heavy music,
Yeah. I mean, slap was a kind of a dirty thing. And also, I mean, back to the technicality part. I mean, there's people that are amazing slap players, amazing, and that was another thing that I will never be an amazing slap player like Louis Johnson. But there is things that it is a tool, and there are some cool things you can do with it. I think if you use it wisely and you make it part of the sound of everything, I think it's a really cool thing. And it can be very musical and it can be very simple. And that's what kind of got me into it. And it goes back again to growing up in LA and where, what you hear on the radio is kind of what you run away from. It's all that commercial crap. But, if you're getting bombarded with it, it does become part of your sensibility. And when I heard bands like the Pop Group, in the late 70s and Killing Joke, who are then using slap, and I'm like, I know that, and wow, they're doing it kind of cool. Like, I could actually utilize some of this thing that I know and plug it into this and actually take it somewhere different. And that kind of inspired me to do that.
Well, going back to what you were saying about your old amp, so when you progressed onto like decent amps,
Yeah.
How do you get that signature sound? How do you get that gnarly sound?
Well, you got to pick the right amp. And what I noticed is a lot of bass amp designers, going from starting in the mid 80s and going into probably at least 2000, with the developers, if I go to like a NAMM and I would see all the bass amps getting made, a lot of them were going for these full range 18-inch speaker, capture, the biggest frequency response, like doesn't distort it, 20,000 hertz, and goes all the way down to 20 hertz. And so it's this big, large-sized, fully rounded sound. I'm like, what can I do with that? It's hi-fi. It's not rock and roll, So I was actually very frustrated, and so I just stuck with PV for years because their stuff, I knew it. There was a certain way that kind of crapped out, and I loved it. And that was just, and I couldn't find an amp that I liked. And then Sans amp came along, and I started seeing, like, they started kind of like hearing what I kind of wanted to hear. There was a little more of the roughness, and then like those dark glass pedals. Like when I heard a dark glass pedal, like, okay, these guys they actually thought like bass players, where it keeps the low end and it keeps the punch, but it breaks up in the way that I like. It gives me the harmonic content in a bass. And the funny thing is that with a bass guitar, you need harmonic content if you're playing loud music. If you're playing against a lot of cymbals and you're playing with distorted guitars, that bass just disappears. And with a little edge and harmonics, you actually can hold up there and keep up with all this other really like, high mid-range, like dominant sounds. Everything is shouting, and you want to be able to shout there with it. So now I think it's quite common, and I think there's probably a lot of amps I could pick from now that I would really like. But coming into it, growing up and playing bass, it was always kind of hard to find an amp I liked.
But what dark glass pedal are you using to get that sound?
Well, no, the first one when I heard it was just that first pedal that they had like 6 or 7 years ago. I don't remember the name of it, but I had it and I used it. Now I have their amp, their Omega amp, so I don't need the pedal. And my bass is just one knob. It's just a volume knob. I don't have any tone controls or anything like that. And I just have my amp. I plug into the amp, and that's it. That's kind of what I like to use. I used to have a flanger pedal, and I used to use a tube screamer back in the 90s because I wasn't getting the grunt out of my amp, and I would just use like 3% of it. Now, like my amp, the Omega is fine. I can get the tone, and I use still very little drive. I just want enough drive to just give me that thing, you know. So it's like without a little bit of drive on my bass, I feel like I'm eating, you know, peanut butter without something to drink. It's unpleasant.
Yeah, it's all the rough and none of the smooth.
Yeah, exactly. And just, I want something liquid, you know. I want something to make it go easy.
So when you were saying about harmonic content, you mean the tone, like you want that tone to sing out.
It's not really drive like distortion drive. It's just a little bit of bite and a little sparkle and edge and like kind of definition, you know. It's just kind of it's then all of a sudden I'm thinking of my bass like a weapon and not like a I don't know. It's just something I can have fun with, you know. It's like a baseball bat. I can hit things with it, you know. Yeah. Boy stuff, I guess.
Oh, come on now. You've gone drinking with me, so you know I'm the same.
That's true. Fair enough.
I was going to say, when you were going on about, you know, boys breaking things and all this crack, and I was like, oh, I might after a few drinks, and then I was like, hang on, I've been in that situation where I've been absolutely hammered, and you've been fine, and you've remembered everything.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
I'm still confused by that text, eat more fruit. Like, I've been confused about that for like 3 years.
Eat more fruit?
What does he mean?
Did I say that?
Yeah, it was one particular. Yeah, you just text me the next day. I was like, oh, Billy, sorry, but I forgot to say it. Good night. I was locked, drunk. I don't remember. And then you just wrote, all good, eat more fruit. And I was like, what does he mean by that? You probably didn't know what he mean. You woke up in Joe's bedroom.
It wasn't even the bedroom. I was on a couch. I woke up on a couch and there was a guy typing on his laptop at his table. I didn't even know where I was. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's the stuff I miss about, you know, bass shows and NAMM shows and all that. It's more for the crack. Like I'm like you. I kind of know what I like when it comes to gear, and I'm not mad fussed about like loads of mad extras and all that. I know what I like kind of things, and I know you know what you like. So sometimes you go into these things and there's, have you seen my 50-headed bass? And you're just like, it's not interested, mate. You know what I mean? There's too many knobs on that. I can't cope.
You know, a lot of people, I mean, I see, and I've noticed this, and it's been a kind of disturbing trend for me because it doesn't, I don't identify with it that much. But then trends come and go, and it could change again. People kind of have been starting to fetishize the bass a little bit, like where they're into the bass and bass only, and and they get so deep into it, and I admire the depth that they take. They're getting into places that I probably would never have the patience or dedication to get into. But what you were saying before, like also what I like about it is the social aspect of just kind of being in a band with other bands or going to gigs and just kind of like hanging out with like-minded people and go, okay, you know, and music is part of it. That's what I do, but it's part of the bigger thing. It's not just the instrument. It's my instrument is my contribution to kind of a whole lot of different things, you know. It's making cool music, and it's also like going out afterwards and having a drink at the bar with people after I make the cool music. It's the whole event. It's the whole aspect, you know.
You think it's going to come back this January?
This January.
Hope so.
I think it might, but not quite in a big way. I think there's going to be people, no matter what, even if it's 100% safe, that it is going to be kind of skittish. I think it's going to take about a year to really get full swing after January. That's my prediction. But I think it will. I think you're going to see a difference by October and September, October. I think we're already going to see like a big difference from now.
Well, I didn't realize it, but a friend of mine sent me a message and said, we were talking about comedy and stuff, and he was like, oh, I'm not doing any of the online stuff because it's weird doing the online stuff, so comedy anyway.
Yeah,
so like,
I hear you.
I'll wait till the wait till the world goes, like you tell a joke and then you wait for, is the delay on the laughter, and like you feed off the laughter. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
You're all right, I'll just wait till the world gets back to normal. And he was like, oh, the world will be even better afterwards. It's kind of like after, the Spanish flu, there was the roaring 20s, and he was like predicting that. So I'm like hoping for that. Like,
there's a big potential for that. Absolutely. It's weird though. The dangerous thing is, I know you feel this, and I know you want to get out there, and I do too. But when you stay inside for a year, like, there are certain things then you get used to of, like, in the end of the night, just like reading a book, like it's quiet, that's that's going to be hard to give up too, and all of a sudden everybody's going out, having a late night, just like, oh, but I really miss those days. And I was just sitting in and like not having to do anything too. I wonder if I'm just going to let that go completely and going to go completely wild, or I kind of become adjusted to this new lifestyle. Yeah. Who knows, man?
I know. Well, I just hope that when people come out of it, they get their priorities right. You know what I mean? Because this has made us, before we've all been busy.
Yeah.
Mad for gigs,
for
mad
sure.
for work, hustle, bustle.
And you're in
now
London.
It's like
that's
we're all forced.
London is hustle central,
hustle.
Right? You got to hustle there.
Yeah.
San Francisco became like that too. It just became so expensive to live there that, and everybody's kind of unhappy, actually. Hustling and mildly unhappy. I'd like to see people come out and be a little happier. If things slow down a little bit and we go back to having a little bit of more fun than we were having.
Oh, well, I know for me personally, my plan is to kind of be a bit more, make the work-life balance better. So don't just be all about gigs, and maybe, every now and then take just a month off, and just go home to Ireland, out in the woods,
Excellent. Great.
Because, life's more important. You got to kind of get and maybe this is making people think like that, I hope so.
I mean, it only helps. I mean, having balanced life only helps if you're a music person. It's going to make your music better, because if you're taking care of yourself and you're making yourself happy, you're finding out how to make yourself happier, right? If you're not happy, it's harder to get happy sometimes. And I really think the best music comes out of it. It makes people happy. Even really dark music makes people happy when they make it. That's why they do it. And if you're not happy, it's tougher to do.
Yeah. I just had this mental image of you guys like skipping in with rainbows into the studio to record "Surprise You're Dead" because you're happy. Surprise, you're dead.
Yeah, but we actually, one thing we did, some of our songs were pretty dark, but we always joked around in between them, because I think that we always had to have that. There always has to be fun, even if you're going to some really nasty places. Like, you have to have humor in it. You have to. It actually makes the darkness darker, and it also, by cutting that darkness off and not taking it too seriously, I think that it puts it in the right context.
Yeah, that is how I describe Fate No More's music. It's definitely so much fun. It's just constant the crack, because it's like you said, there'll be a hint of sarcasm with certain songs, and then there's a cheeky tongue in cheek with some of the tunes. It's great like that you have that. I want to talk to you about your Zon bass. Tell me, because you
sure.
You said you only have one knob on it.
Yep.
The volume knob. I love that. So tell me about, like, you designed that with the Zon guys.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so the Zon bass was the first bass that I got that was a Zon. Joe Zon made for me back in probably around 1990, and I had this Aria Pro 2, which I got turned on. Cliff Burton turned me on to Aria, and it was cool. It had a great tone, and it played really well, and Joe Zahn was like, I want to make you a bass. He lived in San Francisco, and I lived in San Francisco. And I was like, well, I really like the bass I have, And like, as you can tell by now, I'm kind of a creature of habit in a way where I find something that works, I kind of stick with it. Like, I stuck with that shitty amp for a long time and wasn't really that interested in it. And he made me this bass that was my bass that is my bass now. That's my bass. It's the same one. I never got rid of it. And it really did do the things that I wanted to do, but more. And when he talked about making a signature bass, I'm like, well, the only real Zahn bass that I'm really connected to is my bass here. And he goes, well, then let's make that one. And so we went back in, and funny thing is, my original bass was done in the '90s. So, the Bartolini pickups were different than the Bartolini pickups now. And so we went over to Bartolini's place, to Bill Bartolini, and we found a way to kind of get back that thing that was in those old pickups to make it match my bass that I use. And it's as close as we can get to basically being my bass. I did want the one volume knob. We tweaked the EQ and we tweaked the stuff in the back, inside the bass, so that you don't have to worry about that stuff. And like, if I'm playing and my jack gets pulled out, I don't want to knock any treble, I don't want to knock the bass of the treble, thing. I don't want to think about it. I just want to play music. I just want to plug it back in and then just back to where I left off. And so that's kind of the way, we thought about it. And yeah, so that's the BG bass, and that's my bass. That's it.
And would you use a few of them as like backups when you're on the road, or?
I have one duplicate that's exactly like my bass, and that's it. I just bring one extra. I mean, the good thing about Zahn basses is the necks are graphite, so they're not really gonna break on you. The electronics is the biggest thing, or breaking a string. But, the beauty of them is, and this is actually one of the main things that I really liked about that bass the first time, was because it's a graphite neck. If you're playing in a sweaty club one night, or in a bigger hall the neck wouldn't bend. And what used to drive me nuts is that, like, I get the action exactly how I want it, and the next night it would be totally different just by the temperature and the weather. And I'd be getting cramps in my hands, and because I got to press down harder. And it's like, so I'm always thinking about how painful it is to play the song than actually enjoy playing the song. And with the Zahn, it's like no matter what the temperature is, it's exactly how I know it's going to be, and I don't have to even trip on it. That's my bass, and I can play it. So, little things like that, especially when you tour, having something that always feels the way you like it, it means a lot. Because who wants to keep thinking about how much their hand hurts in the middle of the song, right? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. That sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
You're thinking, when is the song going to be over because this fucking hurts? That's just not a good way to play music.
And you have to whip out your tools and then fix it yourself, and it's all a load of fun. I've noticed that with my basses with the weather and the heating, and because mine are just wooden necks, as you can see. So I have to whip out, go out with the neck and all that. Yeah. Yeah, but I'd love it if it just didn't change, but they don't change too bad. But I'm always adjusting them anyway, because if it goes slightly high, because I hate a high action, I have to have it really low. So I'm like, crank it down.
Think about, say I know you've had a week where it just wasn't feeling right, no matter how much you were adjusting it, right? And that's just a week where you're just pissed off all the time, right? You're playing gigs and you're pissed off until then you get it right, and you're like, oh, thank God.
Absolutely. And are they bolt-on necks, or is it like a neck through body situation?
No, it's a bolt-on neck.
Because you're quite heavy-handed, would you have a relatively high action, or what way do you have your
I
action?
suppose so. Yes, I guess it is a little bit high, but not too high. It's just, it's funny. I don't think about it because it's just my thing, right? What works for me. But I have played other people's basses. Like I played other Zahns, like at the NAMM, and like, this thing plays like butter. This is so easy to play. And I realized, I think my bass might be a little more like a tractor. It more dialed in for my style of playing.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of you. I'm like a really light touch. So if I have even mid to high, it's just like, I can't play. I can't go away. I'll just get my own bass.
You should play mine. I'd be curious to think, but it would probably feel like driving a truck to you. You got a sports car right now.
Yeah, I won't be able to play it. I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm all about it. Just keep my life nice and easy. Keep it well low. I'm too posh
Something
to push,
be said for that. I got a ukulele bass a year ago, which I love, because that starts me thinking about just playing and not thinking about fighting all the time. And it's cool. It's cool. I dig it. And I've got a P bass. I've got a jazz bass. So I've got that, thing that I can have for fun, but I mostly use it and play it around the house. I don't record or do live with it that much.
Yeah, so I want to talk about like your bass lines. Your particularly in Fate No More, like your bass lines are so memorable. You can sing them, wow, wow, bam, bam, bam. You know what I mean? They're so melodic within that genre of music. Like, how do you come up with those bass lines?
Best way I can say it is when I'm in the right state of mind, where I'm just relaxed and not overthinking things too much. They kind of just come out and out questioning. Like, I mean, like the bass part for Epic, really, or We Care a Lot. Like, I mean, it's so fucking simple. My monkey brain, my normal way of thinking would never come up with something like that because it's just too easy. You know, it's like I would never slow down enough to do something like that. And I have to be in the right state where all of a sudden it's like, it just feels right. It's okay. Just do it and don't ask questions about it and enjoy it. And that's when the little things like that bass line that are falling to pieces, it just comes out because it's like, doesn't have to mean anything, doesn't have to go anywhere. It just feels like a good thing to do. And it generally is when I do that, when I just stop thinking too much.
And you've got a great connection with Mike Borden. Like the bass lines are so locked in.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't nearly as aggressive a player before I met him. I was a little different. But I met him when I was 18 years old. So that's pretty young, considering the fact I'm almost 58 now. That was 40 years ago. But, before that, I was playing it was a little more melodic. I was more into bands like Buzzcocks, stuff like that. But his style is just like, to make the most out of what he does, which is really unique. I kind of had to like step up and do that too, and make us a unit. And as it turns out, it felt really good to do, and it really worked well for me because it didn't involve me getting too busy with the notes. I didn't have to get into 32nd or 64th notes. I just had it was all about impact, and it was all about that and that's where we went with it. And that's where I found my voice kind of through meeting him.
And I also love all the little melodic lines. I always throw in these cool little lines that, make lads at the back of the bar go, class, Certainly made me do that a lot. And I'm going to admit something to you embarrassing. I probably told you this when I was drunk, but like I used to have a sticker on my door. We had like a music room in my house, which is where my dad had his piano and my brother had his guitars, and I had my first bass. My second ever bass was an Aria Pro 2 as well, actually.
Oh, really?
And
Shit.
Yeah, it was a lovely wooden one with a big Music Man pickup on it. I don't know where the hell it is now. They're like gold dust now. I had a sticker on my door saying, "Don't come in unless you're Billy Gould or Les Claypool or Flea. Otherwise, feck off. I'll have me dinner later." So tell us your Aria Pro 2 story.
I had one that I got in a thrift store. When I was really into Aria Pro 2s, I found one in a store for like $75. One of the things about, when you go on tour, like, with time off, going to like pawn shops is like one of the greatest things you can do because you could find these amazing deals. Like I got some old 66 Fender Duosonic for like $100. Cool stuff, right? And I found some Aria. It was a piece of shit. It was the lowest. And it's like, yeah, $75. I'm just going to get it. And it didn't really sound very good. It kind of played okay. It's something to have around the house, if you're on the phone or whatever, you can, fiddle around, just some trash bass. There was this horrible newspaper headline that was once was in the paper, and it is real. And it was retired priest charged for molesting dying retarded boy. That was in the newspaper. That was the headline. And it was like, that was the most fucked up headline I've ever seen in my life. So I cut it out, and I shellacked it onto the back of the bass. It just seemed fitting to be on that bass. It was like my redheaded stepchild, that bass, And I forgot about it, and I didn't really play it that much. It was really kind of, it's kind of a pain in the ass. And I'd moved a couple houses. I didn't live anywhere for a couple of years in San Francisco, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. And, because you haul a lot of stuff, and you have stuff in boxes. And okay, fast forward to about 5 years ago, and I get an email, and somebody says, "I have your bass." I'm like, "What do you mean, you have my bass?" "I have my bass." He goes, "No, I have your bass. Somebody in the 80s stole your bass, and they gave it to me. They told me it was your bass." And it's like, I didn't have bass stolen. I don't know anything about a stolen bass. And then it was like, it's read me the headline on the bass. I'm like, you have my bass. Okay, now I have it back. It came back to me.
How did you not notice that it went missing?
It was so, I mean, it's such a cheap thing that I got that I never played that I just kind of, I went on tour for a couple of years and I just kind of forgot about it. But it's charming to know that people, that headline has been associated with me now, because people knew it was mine because of that. Terrible.
Have you ever used it on a track, like?
Never. It's so bad. But it is fine to play physically. I mean, if you're just, if you don't plug it in, it's pretty good. But it really it's the worst tone I've ever heard. Actually, one of the worst tones I've ever heard on a bass ever, I would say. And it's funny because Aria makes pretty nice stuff. So I was surprised that they made something so shitty.
Your playing in Fate No More inspired loads of offshoots of genres and great bass players that came after. How does it feel when people come up to you and say, oh, you were an inspiration to me and my playing? Like, how does that feel?
Always great, because I never really considered myself good enough to inspire anybody. I always thought of myself, I always feel kind of challenged. So to think that I did something that really got somebody could take from and take it further, I think it's always been a great thing.
Yeah, well, you're one of my heroes. There you go. I've got a sticker on a door somewhere.
It is awesome. It is awesome to hear that.
Yeah, man. Beast playing. I just love the fact that, like, in the genre of, like, the hard rock metal, that kind of genre, the bass stood out and you were one of those players that made it stand out. Like,
that's cool. Thank God for punk rock, because punk rock was aggressive and is all about slamming and it was okay to be that way. But rock and roll, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, like, the bass player's role in the beginning was just back up what the guitar player is doing and try to stay out of the way of the drummer. And the way production was, it always compressed the living shit out of the bass, so that all it really was just filling in a sonic frequency. It wasn't really like having a voice so much as being part of the color of everything. And I don't like recording with a lot of compression, because to me it takes away the part of the expression, the movement. The pushing is part of the thrill of the. That's kind of where that's the impact. And it was cool to be able to. I can see why we were different, because I was kind of coming. We started kind of in a weird alternative, a punk thing that got into the rock world, and I think that for that rock world, for me being the kind of bass player was kind of different. It wasn't so different in the world I was coming from, but it was when I brought it into this new world where they're saying, wow, a bass could be a little more active and not just being so passive.
Yeah, it's great. It's almost like with the licks you play, it's almost guitar-y in a way. It's like breaking a mold, That's what I love about your playing. It's just
cool.
It's distinctively Gould,
That's cool.
That sounds like that could be the brand for your drink you got coming out. Distinctively Gould. Tell us about that, by the way.
That would be a scotch, maybe. This drink thing, this is a thing, and this is a pretty cool thing. We started playing like in Eastern Europe back in the early days, being the 90s, when Eastern Europe opened up, like when the wall fell. Faith No More was really big. We were touring Angel Dust back then. Even maybe it was the real thing, actually. So we were going out there because that was our touring days when we were going full on. And we got into places like Slovenia, and we got into Russia pretty early. We were in Germany, in Berlin, the night the wall fell. So we became exposed to these places when, like, I remember we played Slovakia in some amphitheater, and like it had just turned over from being communist, and they didn't even know like how to sell tickets and how to, like, there was a guard with a attack dog, and kids were just running by him and getting in for free. They didn't know how to deal with concerts and stuff, right? But it was really cool. It was really exciting because the world was changing, and we were kind of there, right in the middle of it. We were playing our weird music to places where we're watching kind of people's minds getting blown. Because what we were doing was even weird for here, and
Yeah.
Kids were coming backstage and bringing this drink that was like called rakia, and in the Balkans, almost every family makes their own, and it's from the fruit from the garden or the farm, but they've been doing it since like 800 AD, so they got it pretty dialed in. There's a lot of bad shit, but there's some really good shit, and I had some really good shit. It's not the kind of thing you could find in the States, for example, because the good shit stays in the family, and they just don't import it out here. They import it like this industrial stuff, and I would go back there. I would tour with bands. Like there's a band La Plebe from actually. Can you see it? That band. We did a couple tours of the Balkans, and we stay at people's houses, and they give you their rakia, and rakia just became a thing. Like I started going back there, hanging out on my own, and drinking rakia with people, and I got a Jones for it, and it's just like, why the fuck don't I just try to bring it here? Let's see. Nobody knows what it is, and it's amazing, and I want it for myself, and so like my drink now, because I import it here. So I drink it, If I'm going to have a drink at night, I'm going to have a rakia. I have a good rakia whenever I want it. So that's what I started doing. I started just kind of getting in that world. I didn't know anything about it. But I had some shit. I found a family that had been doing it for generations on their farm by hand. And I started working with them. And we got it into, we started California. And I went door to door to bars to tell people what it was and pour it for them and do all that stuff. And then we got into Chicago. And then it's, got into Florida. And now, next month, it's going to be in New York and Pennsylvania, and hopefully by the end of the year in like Texas. And it's kind of getting a thing. People are digging it, and it's just cool. It's not a huge thing, but it's a cool thing, and it is really good, and it is really different from me. You've tried it. You know what it's like.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if you liked it, but I like
it. It is. No, I very much liked it. I just couldn't feel my hands after a while.
Well, that does happen. Yeah.
No, that's just the way I drink. That'll happen with any drink. No, it is well nice. So fruity. Fruity.
It is fruity. It's got the plum.
Yeah, man, it's made out of plum. So what is it called?
Rakia is the kind of drink. Jebiga is the name. Jebiga, if you have any friends who are Serbian or Bosnian, you can ask them about that. But that's what it's called. And it's a real natural one that's made like the way you would on the farm, not like a factory style thing, but like a real artisanal. I mean, just say that word artisanal. It's traditional, and it's the kind you usually crank out for when the daughter's getting married, or somebody grandfather dies. That's the kind of stuff. That's the good stuff, So that's the kind
Any
of stuff.
Any plans to bring it to?
There is. I mean, I literally am doing this myself, so I can only move so fast, and I'm trying to get into a bunch of places, and it's getting a bit overwhelming. But I'm hoping by like end of this year, next year, and start getting it into Europe. I'm going to need to get a different formula slightly because the requirements of the States and European Union are a little different, and then then there's Great Britain, which might even be different than that. Yeah. But yeah, hell yes, we do want to do this. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, and tell me about this. Well, I know it's been postponed this year, but you're going to go back out on the road with Fate No More next year?
We are. We were supposed to go last year, and but next year for sure. I mean, there's a gig we've got set that they're pretty confident they're going to do in October in LA. With System of a Down and Corn at the Coliseum. We're going to do 2 nights there. We had an Australian tour that got pushed back another year. That'll be in beginning of 2022. We'll see what happens this summer in Europe. I don't know. I hear a lot of different things, and I still think nobody really knows, so I can't say. But we were scheduled to do gigs in Europe. Hellfest is canceled, so that's a big bellwether. That makes me think that the other ones are going to too.
Well, we'll see. But when they do come, I'll be there, man.
Yep. Yeah, you will. I guess if you're there, I guess I'm going to be there too.
Absolutely.
We'll get you sorted, Ellen. You'll be okay. We'll sort you out.
Me and Rakia. Just
gig
tickets and Rakia. That'll keep me happy. You know the deal. And when you come to Ireland, you can stay with me.
You betcha. Hey, do you have a whiskey tours in Ireland like you do in Scotland?
Oh, we do. I'll tell you. I'll fill you in on all that now in a minute. Thanks again, Billy, for joining us today. Big love.
Had a great time. See you, Ellen.